If everyone wouldn't mind taking your seats, our graduating students have a very special surprise and presentation for you all. So we're about to get started. Yes, a surprise.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. It's wonderful to see some of the students who have been in my classes and all the parents and friends and all the people who have supported this wonderful cohort. On behalf of the Frankel Center for Judaic Studies, I want to warmly congratulate the 2023 cohort of the Jewish Communal Leadership Program. You've completed a rigorous, intense, and may I say, life-transforming 2 years of studies and training. The Jewish Studies portion of your degree has provided you the opportunity for deep reflection on the histories, societies, and cultures of Jewish communities across the globe. You have had to navigate very different types of courses, instructors, and assignments in the 2 schools in which you studied, social work and Judaic Studies in the LSNA College. As a result, you have further honed your critical thinking skills and have developed a broader worldview that will enable you to tackle complex situations and excel at the career of your choice. At the Frankel Center, my colleagues and I really appreciate and admire the JCLP students who take our courses. You are engaged, astute, kind to your classmates. You have made our classrooms into better learning environments. I'm also grateful to my colleague, Carla Goldman, for her wise leadership of this program and her vision of collaboration across these different schools. The JCLP students who have enrolled in my courses throughout the years have been very dedicated to textual study. This has led me to ask myself, how does close reading of philosophical and literary texts translate into social work and perhaps even social justice? I'd like to answer this question briefly with a 1977 poem by the Jamaican American June Jordan. It's titled These Poems. These poems, they are things I do in the dark, reaching for you, whoever you are. And are you ready? These words are stones in the water, running away. These skeletal lines, they are desperate arms for my longing and love. I am a stranger, learning to worship the strangers around me. Whoever you are, whoever I may become. For Jordan, writing poems is a fumbling in the dark, reaching out to the other. The poem expresses uncertainty, lack of clarity. The speaker is a stranger in the process of becoming. Jordan repeats the line, whoever you are, twice. But the main point I wish to underscore is that poems are things we do. They are a way of connecting feeling to action. The courses you have taken in Judaic Studies have allowed you to reflect on what you wish to do, whether in the dark or by daylight. They have enabled you to reach for the unknown, other, and explore who you seek to become. Your study of the languages, cultures, and histories of Jews and their neighbors are deeply interconnected, as Jordan expresses, to what you do in your lives and who you become in relationship to the beloved strangers around you. At the Frankel Center, we are proud of your accomplishments and commend your perseverance during these intense years of study. We wish you much success as you navigate your next steps. Mazel tov and go blue.
Hi, I'm Rachel Brustein, and I'm thrilled to introduce Alice Mishkin as our keynote speaker. Alice is an alumna of JCLP class of 2013 and a current doctoral student in the Department of American Culture here at Michigan, where she studies Jewish American Palestinian solidarity activism. She is an experienced facilitator, and my classmates and I had the opportunity to learn from Alice last year when she was the interim director of JCLP. Once I committed to JCLP, I spoke to Carla on the phone. Before hanging up, Carla said, I want to let you know I'll be on sabbatical next year, but JCLP alumna Alice Mishkin will be running the program, and I think you're really going to like her. Later that summer, I ran into JCLP alum S.E. Shahar Hill, who also lived in Chicago. And they mentioned that, or I told them that Alice would be advising the program. And S.E. said, "Oh, you'll love Alice. She has really radical politics." Both Carla and S.E. were right. I loved having Alice as the program's facilitator during my first year. Something I really admired about and learned from Alice was her ability to teach about Israel-Palestine to a group of people with a wide range of backgrounds while honoring both the Jewish-Israeli narratives without watering down Palestinian narratives or Palestinian history. Alice was also incredibly supportive in helping students find field placements and provided thoughtful and substantial feedback on student work. Alice, thank you for being, I don't even know where you're sitting. Alice, thank you for being such a great teacher to me and my JCLP cohort. It's my pleasure to invite you up here.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, I gotta move the mic up always. Hi, everybody. Oh, I'm already teary. Okay. So good morning. This day. Yeah. Okay. It is such a joy to be here celebrating this amazing group of graduates. I had the huge privilege of working with Abby, Caroline, Alana, Ellery, Jorgen, and Lydia and Rachel last year. And I'm so pleased to be here to share my thoughts about this incredible group of students and the enormous gifts they'll bring to the Jewish community. I want to begin with a quote. "We cannot retreat to the convenience of being overwhelmed." Ruth Messenger, former president of American Jewish World Service, Manhattan Borough president, lifelong activist, and my first boss out of college, used to say this line in almost every speech she gave. At age 23, new to New York City, and utterly overwhelmed by adulthood and trying to learn the ABCs of the American Jewish community, I used to think to myself, actually, yeah, I would like to retreat to the convenience of being overwhelmed. Thanks, I'll just go do that now. And I was thinking about that 2 weeks ago when Ruth was in town and Carla hosted a Havdalah for JCLP alums and students. The world is really overwhelming right now. There's rising violence in Palestine and Israel. There's white supremacy in the US that allows white men to shoot Black boys with no repercussions and encourages Jews to police our houses of worship out of fear of rising anti-Semitism. There's climate change bringing rising tides and even more unpredictable weather than normal to Michigan. There's the University of Michigan taking legal action against its graduate students and withholding pay for demanding a living wage and safe working conditions. And of course, there's the unending challenges of a post-COVID world. That's a lot we probably agree on and a lot we probably disagree on. But do not worry, I'm not here to be a Debbie Downer. Just have to throw it in for a minute. That's largely, the reason I'm not here to be a Debbie Downer is largely because of the 7 wonderful humans we're celebrating today. When I think of JCLP, the class of 2023, there are a lot of images that come to mind, and most of them are filled with hope and joy. There's our orientation and trip to Detroit, where the students dived headfirst into becoming a cohort, and not just a group of individuals taking classes together. As part of orientation, we had our first Shabbat together, where we enjoyed and introduced some of them to Ann Arbor's famous Jewish deli Zingerman's. We also selected and began learning the Batya Levine song that would become the group's theme song. Maybe they'll sing it later, I'm not sure. No. There's the Israel-Palestine activity, where despite my repeated statements that this was a silent activity, the students could not stop bursting out with laughter. Even in discussing one of the tensest topics in the Jewish community, they found joy. There's the students showing up at seminar each week, smoothies in hand as part of their pre-class ritual. And there's the Shabbaton where, despite our very best efforts, we managed to spend the coldest, windiest evening, maybe humanly possible, sitting outside at York, trying to lean into community while, to quote Jorgen, we were freezing our arses off. I assume that was you, Jorgen. There are a dozen other memories I could share. Tough ones like a field placement that didn't work out quite right, a class with an extremely heavy reading load, and the challenges that come with a communal conversation. But I hope the images I've shared show you all just how incredible these students are and how committed they are to social justice, to critical reflection, and to joy. This program asks a lot of students. I've even heard one or two say it asks too much. But it gives back what you put in. And over the past 2 years, I've watched Abby, Caroline, Alana, Ellery, Jorgen, Lydia, and Rachel give so much. They've refused to retreat to the convenience of being overwhelmed. Abby, ever impossibly organized beyond measure, kept JCLP programming on track as a work study student, finding creative ways to keep the joy going as we navigated the challenges of COVID, making everything from Sukkot open house to the freezing Shabbaton beautiful and memorable experiences. She also asked the group tough questions and, to quote her, brought a mainstream look but radical thinking to seminar. Caroline started this program quietly, and over the past 2 years, she's explored different career paths, advocating for herself to find a field placement that really suited her, and taking courses that would allow her to consider different ways to practice social work. She said at orientation that she wanted to create her own space and be her own person, and she has done that beautifully. Alana continually stepped outside of her comfort zone and pushed her own boundaries. She used both her field placements to take on new kinds of work and explore her growing interest in higher ed and supporting young adults. She also brought really fascinating topics to JCLP for her discussion, including a reflective analysis of white supremacy and professional development, which I think pushed all of us in the room. Ellery, often sitting quietly, and I say this lovingly, with a smirk on her face, jumped into conversations in seminar at just the right moment, using her intergroup dialogue skills to challenge her classmates and bring them back to a point of contention for further discussion. I believe she's also the mastermind behind the JCLP swimming and yoga clubs. Jorgen came to JCLP with humility, positivity, and openness, traits that served him well in building relationships with his peers and having successful field placements. Other than Norwegian, he showed up to the aforementioned freezing Shabbaton with blankets and showed us weak Michiganders how to survive in the cold. He also used his language skills to help build the Shoah Foundation's archive of Holocaust testimonials. Lydia could be relied on for, as her peers described her during orientation, being so thoughtful. Lydia also brought her labor organizing framework to seminar discussions and held her own when disagreeing with her peers. It was amazing to watch her completely thrive when she found a field placement that was far outside the realm of what she expected to be doing when she came into this program. Last, but certainly not least, Rachel brought an inspiring and intense curiosity. In particular, she developed the skill of asking difficult questions of speakers and her peers in ways that could be heard. And she wrote journal entries that were less journally and more critical, thoughtful, analytic term papery. As one Judaic Studies professor told me, Rachel gave PhD students something to think about. I'm personally really leaning into middle-aged motherhood these days and just cavelling over how incredible these students are. They're so wonderful, and it's because of them that I don't retreat to the convenience of being overwhelmed. I want to close with a thought from Paige Walker. Paige here yet? Okay. A thought from Paige Walker, JCLP's program coordinator for 7 years, who essentially co-ran the program with me last year. I sent this to Paige to read because I need her feedback on everything. And this is what she wrote back. I feel extremely fortunate that this group of students was the last cohort I got to work with. They represent so much about what I love about social work: community-oriented, driven, talented, passionate, curious, and it's okay to have a little fun when we do the work too. Each of them are what we call in the admission world sparklers. How lucky we are to have shared their shine, and I can't wait to see how they sparkle next. And with that, a huge mazel tov to the JCLP graduating class of 2023. You did it!
Welcome, everyone. My name is Lydia Greenberg, and I have the pleasure of introducing Jorgen today. So I'm going to say a few words about him. Jorgen doesn't fixate on the minutia. A common refrain, if you spend enough time asking him his preference for one thing or another, is an occasionally expletive-laden, "I don't care." He doesn't care if you give him a bigger or smaller fork. He doesn't care if he has the lemon, the passion fruit, or the chamomile tea. He doesn't care if he has to walk 2 miles in the snow to dog sit. In his words, it was a beautiful night. As someone who cares and worries so much about little things, sometimes I would get frustrated or impatient. Sometimes I would say, "Why can't you just tell me what you want?" But I think I could learn a little something from him. He doesn't sweat the small stuff. The things he does care about are things that actually matter. He volunteered his time for years, as we heard from Alice, to translate testimonies of Norwegian Holocaust survivors, because there are not many people with the language skills, the time, or the interest to do so. We'd have to write discussion posts before class, and it was clear from his posts that he actually did all of the reading and probably some of his own research. And I would often find myself rereading his posts before class to prepare. He always waits until everyone else has been served before he gets his food. He is kind, patient, and a gentle cat sitter, and Marty will miss him very much. He cares about the people close to him, but not only that, he cares about everyone he interacts with, the Jewish community, also cats. Jorgen, you are genuinely selfless, and as much as you try to deny it, you are one of the most caring people I know.
Thank you, Lydia, for those kind and relatively truthful words. As my father and I were precariously balancing a 1,000-pound boat lift with rickety fishing boats on either side, drifting closer to the shoreline, and with the ever-present risk of an untimely visit to the depths of Lake Charlevoix, which, on an unrelated note, is between 50 to 100 feet deep, I had an opportunity to reflect on all the decisions that had led me to that moment. I realized that the blame wasn't entirely my own. My father was, of course, implicated, but not just through the decisions he made that morning as we embarked on our 7-hour ordeal. No, many of those decisions took place before I was even born, such as the decision to leave his hometown of Perth, Scotland, for another country that has a famous Perth of its own, Australia. There, he met my mother, and they traveled to their home country of Norway to raise me and eventually my sister. Then, once he fell in love with my stepmother, he plunged himself into the American landscape with, as has been established, reckless abandon. Now he and my stepmother have moved from northern Michigan to Florida, and the jury's still out on whether that was a sensible decision or not. My mother is joining us through Zoom today, so I would be remiss and quite possibly in quite a bit of trouble if I didn't mention her world-spanning adventures as well. Traveling from the United States to Cathay and all the countries in between, she instilled in me a love for the unknown and an appreciation of the things we so often take for granted. In the late 80s, she traveled to a kibbutz in northern Israel, where she became a part of a new to her community. This prompted the local newspaper in Norway to write an extensive article about my mother, which should give you some indication as to the size of my hometown, or village rather, in Norway. Then there's my sister, who's been to Greece and Spain more times than I've mistakenly pushed instead of pulled when I'm trying to get into an establishment of some kind. My stepmother, a transplant from the grand state of Arizona, and my stepbrother, who's lived in Michigan, Oklahoma, and most recently Denver, Colorado. What does this have to do with JCLP? Well, in seminar, we would often discuss what makes a community. There are, of course, a number of factors involved, and I would argue that migration and movement can be a part of this process. We all have narratives of migration and movement in our lives, be they our own or that of our loved ones. And we've all moved in some shape or another to be here today. Whether a movement of location, ideas, or priorities, today represents a form of communal recognition and celebration. I believe that it's possible, necessary, that we cultivate ties of community across geographical boundaries, even as we work to create new ones. The ties I have made during my time at JCLP will persist even as I depart this country. And the memories of this place and these people will move with me wherever I go. Thank you. Of course, there are many more people that deserve thanks, but I'm afraid I've already run a bit over my allotted time. So I just wanted to say that if any of you present here today or watching through Zoom find yourselves in Norway, please do not hesitate to reach out. In the same way that so many of you have graciously welcomed me into your homes and your lives, so too would I delight in the opportunity to show you around the country that I grew up. All right, let's get on to it's positive. Let's go on to a more positive note. I now have the sincere pleasure of introducing our next speaker. Her own story of migration and movement is one worth mentioning, starting in the Bay Area on the western coast of these United States, including stints in both Madison and Chicago. She will be moving back to Chicago this summer, where she, her partner Tristan, and Marty, the cat of cats, will once again get to enjoy a semi-functioning public transportation system. When she arrived at the School of Social Work in JCLP, her chosen focus was in community change and macro-level social work. Over time, she came to realize that interpersonal practice was the path that she wished to take, wherein she could bring about the greatest amount of positive change in today's society. An anchor to me during the most difficult parts of her graduate experience, and the most gracious of Shabbat hosts, she is one of my closest friends. Following our first week together with this cohort and the one that preceded us, we were all asked to write down our first impressions of one another. And when it comes to this person, there was one thing that we could all agree on. Well, except for her undying devotion to workers' rights, that is. Will you please join me and welcome to the podium the eminently thoughtful Lydia Greenberg.
Hello again. Okay. So in trying to think about a hallmark of our cohort, something that connects us, or a theme for the past couple of years, we've talked a lot about joy, and we talked this year a lot about joy. And yes, there have been joyful moments, but I felt like a more fitting theme is amusement and shared amusement. Sly smiles at each other across the table at seminar, giggling during long car rides, laughing somewhat deliriously at the absurdity of being a grad student. If there's one thing our cohort knows how to do, it's find levity in the small moments. If you know Rachel, you know that she's a prolific giggler. She'll often start laughing at herself in the middle of what she's going to say before she finishes a sentence. Catch Ellery's eye, and about 80% of the time, she's got this like little amused look, like she's just on the verge of laughing. Abby will often say something to the effect of, I don't even know what's going on right now, before cracking up. Alana's giggles are slightly harder to come by, but you know you've actually said something funny when she starts laughing. Caroline has the sweetest grin. It's like ear to ear. And when she's amused, it's impossible not to smile back. Jorgen, the more self-deprecating the comment, the bigger the laugh. And I find myself laughing along. I love this about our cohort. Sometimes we have to be professional, we have to be serious. But I think our sense of shared amusement and excitement has bonded and grounded us. We got to visit a rare book room in Cincinnati, and you should have seen the looks on our faces when we got to see this German Haggadah from 1492. I'm reminded of the fun that we had at a Shabbat potluck where Alana brought this salad with like the most beautiful edible flowers, and we all crammed into Rachel's tiny living room. When we're practicing singing for a big event, we can't help cracking up because we can never make any decisions together. It helps to keep our spirits up during the not so fun parts of grad school. Through the burden of not getting paid for our field placements, the overwhelm many of us have felt balancing this, our many classes, jobs, and other obligations, the mental or physical health struggles that we've all had to manage. I know I've found our seminar a real solace. It's a set time in the week where we all get to sit around a table, check in about our lives, learn from one another, reconnect. In the midst of talking about whichever important issue is affecting the Jewish community today, I always love the moments when I can catch someone's eye across the table and share a little smile.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellery Rosenzweig, and I'm happy to be up here introducing my dear friend, Abby Califf. Oh, Abigail. I can't believe we've made it to this moment. I've been so lucky to spend these past 2 years with you. I remember the first time we FaceTimed for an hour after our orientation call, and I knew we were going to be best friends. By the time our second semester rolled around, I purposely signed up to be in every class with you because your eagerness to learn and passion is so contagious. I just wanted to be around you. I love the way you ask questions and deeply think through situations. You've taught me so many things. One, the importance of always getting a little treat. And two, the value of advocating for myself, especially around writing crazy, scary emails. Abby, we've all been so blessed to have such a silly, compassionate, thoughtful person in our cohort. I'm so excited for your next steps as a therapist, and I can't wait to visit you in Ferndale. I love you.
Ooh, okay. I'm a crier. In undergrad, I studied English, psychology, and Judaic Studies. I used to make the same self-deprecating joke in every awkward encounter with a stranger. I know, what am I gonna do with that? Yet I've stopped making these jokes since joining JCLP. However, I attribute my interest in social work to my English degree. During my time at Kalamazoo College, I was taught that each person's story was made up of millions of tiny stories, surrounded by larger stories of collective thought. For every book that I read, I learned about the cultural, religious, political, psychological, and colonial factors that surrounded the author and the birth of that specific story. Everything just seemed to make sense to me. Why wouldn't we absorb the complexity of the author's life into their words on the page? Why wouldn't we do the work to honor them and understand them for who they are? In my creative writing classes, I had a chance to pretend that I was an author and someone was reading my poetry within the context in which I live. Okay, this makes sense. She's a Jewish feminist, unafraid to explore topics of sex and sexuality for what they actually are, writing during the Trump administration and in the year of the Pittsburgh shooting. To quote my professor and mentor, Dr. Bruce Mills, that's the narrator's reality, and we ought to believe her. And to quote another mentor of mine, Professor Diane Seuss, you use the word nipple in the second line of your poem. That's the Abby I've been looking for. While I knew that social work was all about stories within stories, what I didn't know was just how much the JCLP program would connect me to my own. As many of you here have connections to Judaism, or I assume most likely know a Jew, it might not be surprising to hear that I have a fragmented family history, which I feel close to, yet simultaneously feels out of my reach. I will list just how JCLP has taught me about me. 1, in a quest to find the required reading for my class on Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, my mom and I discovered that my great-grandparents had most of his books, and they were living at home with me undiscovered in Ann Arbor. This is a rabbi who his core spirituality is about social justice. 2, I learned about my dad's side of the family as Greek Jewish immigrants with a multi-generational legacy in the garment industry through Caroline's seminar on Jews and fashion. 3, on a trip home with JCLP students, we stopped at a Culver's in Ionia, Michigan, which was also the location of my grandmother's first post-grad job as a social worker in the prison system. She passed away just before my first birthday. In my Yiddish class, I not only learned a language my family spoke, but a way in which they lived. For my final project, I introduced my sweet nephew to our family in Yiddish, without realizing I was equipped with the tools. I was equipped with the tools to connect the next generation to my family that came before them. In my Anne Frank course, I not only learned what real non-Jewish allyship looks like, as demonstrated by a powerhouse of a professor and activist, but for the first time in my life, I was faced with what it meant for my grandfather and great uncle to be under the age of 13 running from the Nazis. Number 6, the learning is quite simple. On the last day of JCLP seminar, Ellery and I turned to each other and at the exact same time said, JCLP has taught me how to live a Jewish life. At the core of these learnings is the Jewish Communal Leadership Program, at home base, fostering space for reflection, growth, and tools to live a fuller life. And how rejuvenating is that entering the field of social work? I should probably thank some people. Thank you to my cohort for teaching me unconditional positive regard, which is the pillar of therapeutic social work practice and one that I hadn't seen in the works. And for encouraging me to be my full self. The true light of this program is you. Thank you to my brothers, Josh and Dustin, for teaching me entrepreneurship, creativity, and for endlessly encouraging me. Thank you to my aunt and uncle for driving through mountains and running through the airport to be here. Patty and Rob for being my second parents, and my cousin Monica for being inspirational. Thank you to my partner Max for being a full-time supporter while I transitioned to more of a part-time partner role and a full-time student, and for making me feel confident in my choice to be a social worker. I'm excited to be a full-time partner now. Thank you to my parents, Melanie and Steve, for letting me cohabitate with you. You are both very therapeutic people in nature, and most of what I learned about how to make people feel good is learned from you. While I couldn't give you your own certificate in Jewish Communal Leadership, I have a piece by the same artist who made our certificates titled Shema, which means to listen, that I figured you could put up in the house. It's a step up from my childhood artwork. And with that, I'm ready for whatever story comes next. Thank you. And I'm back to introduce the lovely Rachel Brustein. Rachel Brustein is a driven and intelligent human being, spiritual leader, and a wonderful friend. But I'll just call her Brew. As a big city gal, Brew has had a rocky relationship with the city of Ann Arbor. As a native Ann Arborite, this has felt pretty complicated for me. Yet at the same time, Brew has embraced her role as an Ann Arbor community member and leader to the fullest. When not studying, you can find Rachel inviting all of the U of M community members over to Shabbat dinner, really mixing between schools, which can sometimes be problematic, undergrad and graduate programs, making delicious veggie meals, singing, and co-creating Ann Arbor's very own minyan. Moving to a new city is lonely and challenging, but Brew went out of her way to be the glue that binds people together over tasty food and communal singing so that no one ever has to feel alone. Brew, your dedication to halakha, tenacity, and deep care for those around you makes you an outstanding Jewish communal leader. And while Rachel Brewstein may not love Ann Arbor, I can say with full confidence that Ann Arbor loves Rachel Brewstein.
Okay. Abby, that was extremely fitting. Near the end of my first semester in JCLP, I was on my way out of Alice's office and started crying. Rachel, what's wrong? She asked. I hate Ann Arbor. And I'm spiritually dead. So Alice already knew this and became the first person to reassure me that not everyone loves Ann Arbor. Despite being a certified Ann Arbor hater, a title bestowed on me by my roommate, Nina, I have come to love so much about my time here. I love living in a brick building. I love that the bus picks up across the street from my apartment. I love that when I go to York, just half a mile south of where I live, I run into community members and classmates. I love the grotto, both the perfect first date spot and the best place to go after Bill's closes too early. After being in Ann Arbor nearly a year, I accepted that I would not be spiritually fulfilled if I did not seek it out. Going to shul on a weekly basis is a big part of my life. And during my first year, I did not go at all because I had already decided I wouldn't like it. I both liked it more than I expected and continued going and building community. I met really wonderful people, sweet and rambunctious children, and I'm grateful for everyone who hosted me for Shabbat meals, seders, and who came to the Joyful Jewish Jams concert. I somehow ended up on the organizing team for Kolenu, a new local minyan, and learned that emailing people, can you lay in the fifth aliyah 2 weeks from now, is both an organizing skill and a great way to meet people. Now for all the people to thank. Thank you, Nina and Alex, for not just being fun and kind roommates, but teaching me that curb your enthusiasm relates to the law. Thank you, Alice and Carla, for bringing so much of yourselves to your teaching. Thank you, Paige and Katie, for being there for logistical and emotional support throughout the program. Thank you, Mira, for being a supportive partner and learning what Alice calls the ABCs of Jewish communal life and all of the social work acronyms too. Thank you to my dad, Abe, a lawyer, and my mom, Kathy, an appraiser of rare books and photographs. Though I became a social worker while in grad school, I learned what a tort was thanks to my roommates and also visited a rare book collection in Cincinnati. When I was crying in Alice's office during my first semester, I told her I need to both like where I live and have strong local friendships. But if I can only choose one of those, I'll take the latter. This cohort was the first thing I loved in Ann Arbor, and I've enjoyed our time going out for drinks and dancing, Shabbat dinners, dips in the river. Oh yeah, and that we planned a Bayou Levine and Ellie Halper concert. This is something I could not have imagined when I first taught Baya's Nechama Nigun last fall. With that, I want to express brief individual gratitude to each cohort member. Lydia, having you as a fellow Chicagoan, I know you're from the Bay, but you're a Chicagoan at heart, really helped me transition to this program. Jorgen, thank you for introducing us to Norwegian film. Abby, thank you for bringing a feminist analysis to every conversation. Ellery, thank you for reminding me to have a sense of humor about everything. Alana, thank you for simultaneously giving great LinkedIn and cover letter advice while remaining anti-capitalist. All of you always have a couch to stay on in Chicago. And if you ever need anything, I'll email the Avodah alumni listserv. Oh, just kidding. It was already stapled to the thing. Now I get to introduce my friend Caroline Strauss. Caroline is not only so kind, caring, and funny, she also keeps the whole cohort updated on the latest TikTok trends, including how to properly put on your master's hood. She has something to teach all of us. One of the first one-on-one moments we had was her teaching me how to use Canvas during my first week of grad school. I guess that's the difference of taking 5 years off before grad school versus coming straight from undergrad. And then this year, she taught our whole cohort about the history of Jews in fashion and department stores, which is a topic I love. Caroline and I have also enjoyed cooking together. And last summer, she brought me on a day trip to East Lansing, complete with Ethiopian food, a tour of MSU's beautiful green campus, the art museum, and of course, the MSU dairy store. Caroline, I love your creativity and compassion, and I'm so looking forward to more adventures at Chicago. Most importantly, getting ice cream and going to the American Girl store.
As my cohort members have said and love to remind me, I'm a Gen Z, and so I wrote this on my phone, and I'm the only one who didn't print it out. But that's fine. I want to start by saying I cannot believe this day is here. Grad school is a stressful time in general, and I made the decision to come right after undergrad, which was maybe not the best, but we did it and we're here. But with all that stress also came this group of people who I ended up heavily leaning on for my entire program. I consider them to be great friends. I've grown immensely as a person with JCLP, which I don't think I expected. And it allowed me the space to explore what is important to me. I'm so lucky to have such a great cohort to experience this with, and I wanted to give a little shout out to each of them. Abby, my only regret is that we didn't become closer when you worked at MSU. I can't imagine grad school without you and the numerous trips to the Trevor Wood Library. Alana, I always feel so much more calm when I'm around you, and I'm reminded to notice the small things in life. Ellery, after being somewhat adjacent to each other our whole lives, I'm so happy we are finally friends, and I know I can count on you for fashion advice, anxiety advice, interpersonal practice advice, and a great friend who I know I will have for life. Jorgen, I'm constantly amazed by how deeply you think about things, and I aspire to have half as many questions as you do about the rest of the world. And mark my words, we will be taking a JCLP trip to Norway at some point. Lydia, I will miss our car debriefs. And this is what I get for writing it on my phone, but our car debriefs and the way you show up in seminars. I applaud you for always speaking your mind as you did on our Detroit day, and we all lamented. I can't wait to be in Chicago with you and Brew. And finally, Rachel, thank you for helping me come out of my shell. I don't think I've ever met someone so opposite of me, but in the best way possible. And by that, I mean, the extroversion. You actually make me want to be more extroverted, which I never thought I would say. And I'll miss our cooking dates, but I'm so excited to continue them in Chicago. Of course, I wouldn't be here without the support from Carla, Katie, Paige, and Alice over the past 2 years. Thank you so much for all you've done for the program. I really wouldn't be here without the support of my friends and family. How lucky am I to have family and friends come from Illinois and Kalamazoo to support me today. They've always been the ones who assure me that I'm going to be a great therapist, and also the ones who assure me that they're going to seek my services, which is unethical, but for them, I do it. Thank you for always listening to my rants about grad school, of which there were a lot, and always supporting me. And finally, to my family, Nate, I couldn't ask for a better big brother, and your dedication to the Jewish community is always inspiring me. Mom and Dad, you have always supported me wholeheartedly in anything I do, even when I don't believe in myself, and I'm so grateful. The passion you both have for the work you do always inspires me, and I hope that I can have the same impact on my clients as you have had on those that you work with. I love you. A piece of my heart will always live in East Lansing, but now a piece of my heart will always live in Ann Arbor too. I never thought I'd be saying this, but I'm going to miss Ann Arbor. Unlike and for probably the last time, go Blue. Back up. And with that, I'm so excited to be introducing my dear friend, Alana Lambert. Alana, when I first met you, I think I told you, you reminded me of one of my friends from childhood. And from then on, I knew it was sort of a sign that you were going to be a great friend. And that has proven true to this day. When I first met you, I immediately felt comfortable around you. That's always something I've said to you, but it's really true. Like, I'm always calmer in your presence. I always looked forward to our swimming dates and yoga classes with the Carytown crew when we felt like procrastinating our work, which was a lot. Thanks to you, I've learned to take things less seriously, like the times we went to Target and you and Ellery would have a fashion show in the middle of the clothing section 5 minutes before it closed, which would cause me immense anxiety. But then again, I learned to not take it too seriously. I have to say that I'm not a cat person, but Alma is one of my favorites, as well as Marty, of course. And I loved getting to hang out with her and you. I've been so lucky to learn more about you as a person, and I consider you a great friend. Your fashion sense, outlook on life, and overall positive presence are just some of the many great qualities you brought to JCLP. I'm so proud of you, and I can't wait for you to visit Chicago so we can go to the American Girl doll store.
Okay, thank you. I feel so grateful to go after all these wonderful speeches. I feel so supported and excited to be part of this group. So I grew up around the Michigan Mystique. I went to Camp Michigania. I knew the fight song. I walked in and out of my parents' house every single day, seeing the Michigan flag. So from a young age, I knew that I wanted to be in Michigan. I knew that I wanted to go to Michigan. And then as I grew up, I realized there were maybe some deeper reasons why I wanted to be in Michigan. My dad's family escaped from the Holocaust and ended up in Detroit. And I felt a deeper desire to be there to connect with my family and my history. So my name means tree in Hebrew, and I think the way I see trees has been grounding for me. I think of a tree that has roots and branches. I think it's really important to understand my roots and where I come from. And I also am excited to think about how I want to grow and where my branches want to grow. So first I'll talk about my roots, and then I'll talk about my branches. I feel connected to my ancestors or my roots. I feel curious about the past and what came before me, which is why I wanted to study social work and Judaic Studies and Jewish community in Ann Arbor and Detroit, because it is studying my community and my history. I wanted to understand how our current American Jewish institutions and ecosystems came to be. And after taking Jewish studies and social work classes, I now have a better understanding of how the trauma intertwined with the need to organize and create structures that led to some of our current institutions in the Jewish community. We also spent some days in Cincinnati this semester, and although I have no family in Cincinnati, I realized by the end of the trip that by learning deeply about the history of Jews in one city, it helps me understand the cities I've lived in. And learning about your community is learning about yourself. Next, on to my branches.
I feel like I have a commitment, responsibility, and desire to think about what kind of Jewish communities I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of Jewish communities that are expansive and questioning and inclusive, ones that are excited about the future, ones that are excited about what's growing. And I think I'm also thinking about how I want to show up in those Jewish communities and what I'm bringing to the community. In some way, I've gotten a little peek of what it's like to be a JCLP alum because I've gotten to work with two in my field placements, and I love all the people who graduated last year too. But specifically, Haley and Lauren, who are both supportive and encouraging. And it's exciting to now be a part of a community that now has mentored me in so many ways. Because of the different topics we covered in seminar, ranging from Israel-Palestine to Jewish education to Jewish fashion, which is the famous one today, I feel confident and I'm excited to have more conversations where I know I'll be able to think through both sides, empathize with both sides, and think about what I want to say and share my perspectives and thoughts on the topic. After JCLP, I now see the value and need to be involved in the Jewish community in a way that I wasn't before, and I'm grateful for that new perspective. So I have this large curiosity about the past, about where I came from, something that I can never fully understood. Similar to the roots, they can't be seen because they're underground. And I think, thanks to my brother for helping with that one. I think moving to Ann Arbor, studying Judaic Studies, studying social work is one way for me to try to grasp onto something that I can never fully understand. And that seems like what I'm meant to do, is just to keep trying and learning and trying to understand where I come from and think about the best way to go forward with that information and who I want to be. So I'm so grateful for this experience. It changed the way I see myself, changed the way I see the Jewish community, changed the way I see the world. And that is such a gift. So I'm so grateful. Thank you to Carla and Katie and Paige and Alice, to my family here today, the ones that are not able to be here, and the family I'll never know. Thank you to my cohort. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being there through me, through all the laughing and all the crying and every single emotion, and for encouraging me to think in new ways. Thank you. And now I will introduce our last speaker, Ellery. Ellery's graduating. Is it official? After spending basically every day with Ellery for the past 2 years, I wanted to share some gratitude for you that I think others in this room may agree with as well. Thank you for being there for me when I needed someone to talk to about my fears and insecurities. Thank you for being there for the celebrations as well, and also encouraging us to celebrate. Thank you for always being ready for adventure, spontaneous hang, even when the spontaneous hang means untangling my hair. I love all our marathon days of walking and swimming, yogaing, travelwooding, grocery shopping, and then FaceTiming. Thank you for finding the beauty and the silliness in all of us. And thank you for bringing so much joy and laughter to every seminar and all our JCLP events. You are like so special and smart and silly, and I've learned so much from you over the past 2 years. I literally can't imagine this experience without you. You are so loved, and I'm so grateful that JCLP brought us together. I'm excited to continue being part of your life and your journey. So yes, it is official.
Oh my God, it feels like my bat mitzvah right now. Okay. Wow, you saved the best for last. What a treat. These past 2 years have been such a wild ride. Looking back, I can't believe how much things have changed. When we started this program, we were fully masked up, and I was adjusting from working remote at Repair the World Detroit and transitioning to being a full-time student in classes and field. I remember feeling a lot of anxiety the first couple of weeks, but quickly I learned I was so lucky because with all the new changes, I had the JCLP cohort on my side. I really could not have asked for a better group of friends to go through this with. When I was stressed out, overwhelmed, or needed a good distraction, I knew I could rely on my JCL peers, whether it was our adventures in between classes, like going to the vending machine for pizza, or better, a slice from Joe's, spending hours wasting time in the social work student lounge, or our sweet Shabbat dinners. I quickly gained lifelong friends. But there were some real challenges for me to balance within all this program. With both Judaic Studies classes and social work, field as a therapist, and working as a graduate student instructor, now on strike, I learned a real lesson in how to prioritize my needs. I felt like this forced me to overcome my fears about coming off like I had it all figured out or some form of perfectionism. I began learning to communicate when I needed supervision, support, or some extra time. I feel blessed to have been able to work through these skills in an educational environment where I can make these mistakes. Also, I learned to not be afraid to just try. These past 2 years, there have been moments that I just had to wing it and adapt to what was happening around me. Whether it's something new with clients or facilitating a class on sports for undergraduate students with zero personal knowledge of sports, I had to jump in. And as I transitioned to being a full-time social worker, this need to just try will continue. After JCLP, I see this real opportunity to just try and actively choose the Jewish community, spaces, or traditions I want to engage with. All year, I've been exploring how Jewish guilt, obligation, and duty have impacted my path to where I am today in this program. When asked a year ago by Alice, why are you in JCLP? I felt like it was a no-brainer. My sister had been in the program and loved it. I'd always been involved in the Jewish programs growing up and was working at a Jewish nonprofit. But I didn't have a real answer because honestly, I felt like it was something I was supposed to do, or it was my duty. Researching for seminar on the topic I was running, Jewish guilt, obligation, and duty, I learned about the concept of pikuah nefesh, a mitzvah that says saving a life is always a priority, even when it means disobeying other commandments. I think this concept is a helpful reminder to reevaluate the rules in our lives that our lives supersede obligation. This mitzvah calls for us not just choosing the life, but choosing the lives we want to live and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. This is such a powerful concept because it makes us take a look at how we engage in Jewish traditions, why we do them, and is it adding to our lives? Through JCLP, I learned that sometimes obligations bring structure and greater purpose. For instance, from my time studying Rabbi Joshua Heschel, I learned how the Sabbath has such an important role in giving us built-in rest, connection, and a way to restart our week. But through my time in JCLP, having more Shabbat dinners with my cohort, I've seen this obligation become a benefit to my life, even though it wasn't something I grew up with when I was growing up. Oh man, I missed a line. It's okay. With all this being said, I want to live a Jewish life because it feels like something I'm supposed to be doing. Or not, I want to live it not because it feels like something I'm not supposed to be doing. Whatever. Oh my God. But I want to actively reevaluate the traditions, obligations, and duties I've inherited and lean into how they're adding to my life. Being in JCLP these last 2 years, I've had a real lesson in continuing to prioritize my needs, remembering to lean on my people for support, trying new things, and actively engaging in the Jewish life I want to live. Thank you to my friends, family, JCL peers, Katie, Paige, Alice, and Carla.
I'm Marie Petty, and
Shovers. We're the first year JCLP students.
yes. Thanks. When I first joined JCLP, I was pretty uncertain about what to expect. I wasn't sure what exactly this commitment entailed or how we as newcomers would fit in with such a well-established cohort. However, from the first moment we arrived, you welcomed us into the group, offering not just advice, but genuine care and friendship. The school's social work, like any department at a large university, can be really intimidating and even lonely. So having the ability to turn to and support one another was so meaningful. It was so nice to know that there was always someone there in our WhatsApp group or in person to lean on, even if it was just to commiserate. Though more often it was something more positive, a joke, further engagement with a topic we had discussed, or making plans for our next event. The events and discussions that we had were truly incredible. Community-driven, often full of hope, joy, and even music. Even within the more challenging discussions, we knew that we would support one another, whether it be during the discussion or afterwards when we began to unpack it. While it's really difficult to imagine JCLP without you here beside us, I know that we'll still be in touch. This is one thing JCLP does so well, not just bringing us together in this moment of shared learning, but maintaining strong connections and community with current students and alumni. Anyway, I have every intention of holding you all to that. Each of you has had such a profound impact on me. Your willingness to share your interests, your vulnerability and thoughtfulness when discussing difficult topics, your powerful insights, and your ability to get through this entire program, not just JCLP, but also completing your MSW in such a short period of time with so much on your plate, while still offering so much of yourself to the school, to the community, and to all of us. It's truly appreciated, and I hope you're recognized for all that you've done and all that you've achieved in this time. You're now graduating with your MSU after completing two of the top programs in the world. And you guys are what makes this program what it is. You are what makes it #1 in our field. And I know you will continue to do incredible things. I can't wait to see what you achieve going forward. Mazel tov.
Graduates, thank you so much for bringing us in and welcoming us as part of your family. From day one, it felt like Marie and I had been sharing memories and laughs with each of you for years, and we would not have been such a connected cohort without each and every one of your efforts. Whether it was driving us to an event, providing a class recommendation, giving life advice, or going out for a drink after seminar, you were always there for Marie and me, and the JCLP program would not have been what it was without each of your additions. We engaged with amazing speakers with whom we agreed. We contended with fascinating lecturers who challenged us in our preconceived notions. We experienced the beautiful city and Jewish community of Cincinnati, and we contemplated how to ensure the Jewish community is open and inclusive to all individuals for future generations to come. None of this would have been possible without your incredible efforts. One of the things I admire most about this group of graduates is that regardless of the discussion topic or the event we were attending, anytime we came together as a cohort, you blocked out all of the outside distractions in order to maximize our time together. I appreciate each and every one of you so much, and I'm so excited to see what you accomplish, now armed with your master's social work degrees and certificates in Jewish communal leadership. Thank you so much for all that you have done with this program and for all you have provided Marie and me, and forever go blue.
Hi, everyone. We're getting there. But, I really just want to take a breath, right? To take in this moment, to luxuriate in it. We're heading towards the end, but, it's a moment to be grateful for being here at this moment, which is both an end and a commencement. One step, an important step on a continuing journey. And really, so much has gone into this, so much cultivation, care, and nurturance. Of course, the 2 years of work and connection put in by our graduates, but also in this group, so much invested by those of you joining us today. Family, friends, teachers, community, grateful to have a good group of JCLP alumni here. You've all cared about and invested in these graduates, given your love, your support, sometimes help with tuition, along with your beliefs and your values and your hopes for the future. Congratulations to all of you, to all of us. Mazel tov. This is a moment where we get to collectively reap the harvest of what has been planted. In recent days, I've been thinking a lot about the themes that emerged in what our graduates shared with us just now, that have been part of our conversations over this past year. And the two that come most readily to mind is that of joy and obligation. And it occurred to me that, and I thank Ellery for the nuance that you just brought to this discussion, because sometimes these get set up as sort of opposites. And as you just shared, I really think they aren't. That sometimes we feel like what we're required to do or expected to do is not something we should expect to find as a source of joy. Joy often seems to be reserved in our culture for the things that you actively choose rather than things that are imposed upon you. But it occurred to me, and this is just my take on it, that we miss something important about Judaism. And if we look at it in that light, traditional Judaism, of course, imposes all kinds of daily, weekly, yearly obligations. But even the Judaism practiced by lots of much less than observant American Jews still requires us at times to show up, even when we don't want to, or it's not convenient, doesn't fit our stage in life, or it just seems too long and boring. So, but after years living with COVID, many of us often just want to stay home. Thank you for coming today. Also, thanks to those who are joining us by stream, because we've learned a lot about the importance of allowing people to show up in different ways. But you know, we live in a world that pushes back often against difference, against obligation, that often asks why we might want to do something when it's too hard, or that others don't approve of, or that takes effort, or doesn't pay, or interferes with self-care. And many of the issues we try to unpack within JCLP, arguments about left versus right-wing anti-Semitism, multi-faith families' role in the future of Judaism, Israel politics, and Israel-Palestine issues, tend to be, sadly, polarizing, demoralizing, sometimes overwhelming. But the thing is that Judaism, I think, has this trick. It plants seeds. It asks us to do the same thing over and over again. And repeated exposure to something that you may not understand or even want, whether a Passover Seder, rituals around Shabbat, hearing or learning prayers, cultivates ultimately a familiarity, which can mean that when you're ready, whenever you're ready, it's there for you, it's available. And sometimes you might get to have a conversation like I got to have with my high school senior son this past year. He's today on a Jewish study retreat in New York with the Shalom Hartman Institute. I'll tell you something about him. When we were celebrating Shabbat, and he said, you know, I used to think that these rituals that we do on Friday night were really boring and really long. Now, he said, I wish they were longer. And what had been onerous had become what he looked forward to, and really actually made even that much more special by developing these incredible challah baking skills. The Greek poet Dionysius Christianopoulos wrote, "They tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we were seeds. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we were seeds." I know he wasn't thinking about Judaism or about the challenges that we face right now when he composed this, but it certainly speaks to us and our time. What is education or religion or community but the act of planting seeds and hoping that they will take? What is resilience but girding ourselves to fight another day? As Pirkei Avot reads, and as is present on our invitation and graduation certificates, the day is short and the work is great. But the work is not yours to finish, but neither are you free to take no part in it. As these invitations, with their beauty, and actually their certificates, show, obligation and joy do not have to be opposites at all. They can exist, they should exist in dynamic relationship. Psalm 126, which is recited as part of the Grace After Meals, uses an agricultural metaphor. It seems to describe the great burdens that have come to characterize too much of Jewish history, but promises that out of such suffering and out of obligation will come redemption and rina, joy. Azorim bedima berina yiksoru haloch yelechu vacho no se meshech hazarabo yavo verina no se alumotav. Those who have sown in tears will reap in joy. Those who went forth weeping, carrying their bags of seeds, now return full of joy, bearing their harvested sheaves. There's not actually that much weeping in JCLP. But here are our sheaves. We get to reap a particularly bountiful harvest, reaping fruit that may lend itself to repair, not, I think, the world to come, but the world we inhabit now. I am honored to get to present our formal certificates of Jewish Communal Leadership from the School of Social Work and the Frankel Center for Judaic Studies to our graduates. These students have planted seeds. What can we, and it is now upon them to continue to think about what we can do to repair the world and to wait to see if our efforts will bear fruit. Seems like a vestige or something else. Okay, so let's celebrate our harvest. We're going to do this in last name alphabetical order. So, Rachel Brewstein. Now, you've all learned a lot about these students, so nothing that I say probably will come as a surprise. But Rachel has found a lot of meaning in traditional forms of Jewish observance community, but also in communities and practices that respond to the demands and concerns of the times in which we live, finding a strength in Jewish community that does not need to simply replicate the past or the practices of the past. For Rachel, so first of all, here's your beautiful certificate. And yes, it is a JCLP tradition to choose books for our graduates. So for Rachel, I wanted to get a resource that conveyed what it means to dig more deeply into Judaism while thus drawing on ancient traditions and our powerful histories in a way that can be meaningfully responsive to the world we inhabit and hope to repair. So also, by the way, given people's interest, it can be hard to find them books they don't have. I'm counting on this generation not to have too many books, even if they know them very well. So I have a few backups at time, but I'm confident this is a new book by Rabbi Michael Strassfeld called Judaism Disrupted, a spiritual manifesto for the 21st century. Michael Strassfeld was one of the, has a long history in this. He was one of the authors of the first Jewish catalog, which is one of the sort of sparking elements that helped Jews sort of take control of their own Jewish lives. And this now he is reimagining for the 21st century. But that felt, even though he's been around a while, that felt too new to me to stand by itself. So I also got The Tribe of Dinah, which is edited by Melanie K. Kantrowitz and Irana Klepfish. Melanie K. Kantrowitz of blessed memory. Irana Klepfish was here not that many years ago for our conference that we ran on Jewish feminisms. These are pioneers, lesbian authors, thinkers, writers, poets, who were like a leading edge in pushing the Jewish community to take hold of its history, to take hold of its traditions and say, include us all. We don't have to do this the same way. So I know that these hopefully will be part of leading you ahead. Okay, congratulations, Rachel. Abigail Califf. So, you go. Abby has worked hard in her time at JCLP, charting her course toward care for women's sexual and reproductive health within somehow the context of Jewish communal care. Her coming work at Honey for Moms, with its focus on neonatal care and general wellness for expectant new moms, expectant parents and new moms. Right on cue, I like that. So Abby has struggled a bit to figure out how to match her professional interests with her Jewish interests, and frameworks that sort of take both of these things into account. We, however, were able to find the perfect companion to her new job with its, and here it is. Someone else who was here with us a few years ago for our feminism conference, a book by Joyce Antler. This is the best title ever. You never call, you never write. A history of the Jewish mother. Lydia Greenberg. Okay, so I'm really counting on that idea of not having books that are very important to what you care about. Lydia has devoted much of her time and attention and passion to a future fueled by the power of labor and of workers, and through unions, advancing a vision of a more humane, more just, more compassionate society. I know that she knows this book because she's quoted from it. This is a wonderful book by Annalise Orlick, Common Sense and a Little Fire, Women in Working Class Politics in the United States, 1900 to 1965. It's a collective portrayal of 4 women labor activists who started when they were young women, most of them teenagers, Jewish immigrants to the United States, impoverished, working in the garment industry, who came to America with great hopes, kept their great hopes for America, but didn't think it matched what it should be. And took it upon themselves, and Ben and I have asked this question and thought about what was it that made them think that they were the ones who could change this world, this society. They were poor, they were immigrants, they were girls. What gave them that sense of power to say, it's on us to make things better? And in the process, they changed the American labor movement and they changed American society. I know that you take that question seriously as well. It's wonderful to bring that into the 21st century when most people are sort of like, yeah, things are going okay for us. But realizing that this is a continuing demand and continuing commitment. So it's a beautiful book. Okay, I'm going to test my theory again. Ilana Lampert. Sorry, Ilana Beth Lampert. These are very official and beautiful. So as you've heard from Ilana's use of the tree metaphor, she's been thinking a lot about the world of plants and environment that surrounds us, and has, with her final project for Judaic Studies, created a website related to Jewish herbal traditions and trying to spread knowledge about them, recover what is often lost knowledge, and create a website that can hopefully create a community of people engaged in thinking about these things. So I know she cites this book. Did you buy it? Yes? Kol hakavod, good for you. That's so wonderful. So I brought it back up. And we'll give this to someone who you think needs to learn more about Ashkenazi herbalism. Thank you. I'm so glad you bought it. So we have something different because actually, what was pointed out by her work is that there's not enough attention to this. So there's not a ton out there, right, on Jewish herbal practices, which, as she points out, much of it was lost in the destruction of the Holocaust. But I have now the Native American Herbalist Bible. In fact, it's 9 books in one, according to the cover, because it's very important. As you have shared, you said, learning about one city, I've learned about other cities I've lived in. You also made the point that learning about, not today, but elsewhere, learning about my community helps me understand other communities as well. And so I'm sure Native American herbalism, the great wisdom in that, will be part of your ongoing journey. So. Jorgen Robertson Rieberg. Jorgen's investment in JCLP has been a wonderful labor of love and growth that emerged first in relation to his interest and care for the recorded interviews of Holocaust survivors that were collected in Norwegian by the Shoah Foundation's Visual History Archive. When Jorgen went to try and learn from these interviews, he found that although 30 interviews had been collected, they had never been translated into English and thus not included in the corpus of interviews that were searchable through the Visual History Archive. So rather than just sort of complaining about it, what does Jorgen do? He joined the Jewish Communal Leadership Program. Last summer, he did an internship, his field placement with the Shoah Foundation, and took it upon himself to translate 30 Holocaust narratives that were given in Norwegian, and is now working on bringing together some of his reflections and understanding the stories that otherwise would not be told if he hadn't done this work. So for Jorgen, I wanted to share one of the most insightful and moving Holocaust memoirs that I know, one that is able to capture the voice and psyche of a young girl as the horrors of the Holocaust were revealed to her, making it very real, very human. We are honored to have Irene Butter with us today, the author of Shores Beyond Shores, From Holocaust to Hope, My True Story. This is a great model of what it means to tell this story, why it's so important. Signed by Irene. And, thank you for being here, Irene, as well. One of our previous speakers at JCLP graduation. Ellery Rosenswad. I wanted to say it right because I hope I did, because it didn't get said correctly yesterday. Ellery has maintained a clear focus in her questions, very aware of the richness of the experience that she had growing up provided by the Metro Detroit Jewish community. She has felt irresistibly drawn back into that space, into this space, not always knowing why, and trying to make sense of her own balance between a sense of expectation, obligation, and her own, and trying to identify her own choices. As she said, since her sister did JCLP, she kind of knew that she had to do it. We're all glad she did. Here again, I was drawn to a book that I know she knows. Assigned from it during her class discussion, but hoping she didn't buy it. Oh, you did? Amazing. That never happens. That's oh, there you go. That's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. The Modern Jewish Girl's Guide to Guilt. And what's great about this book is it takes very seriously sort of the problem of doing things just because we should, but it also takes very seriously sort of the power of the world of obligations, right? And what they mean to folks as a wonderful authors really trying to work out sort of those questions. So this will now be on your bookshelf. Appropriately serious, but fun and irreverent. That's right. The problem of Kindle, I forgot about that. Definitely a problem. Caroline Strauss. So throughout the year, and I assume 2 years, Caroline has reminded us of the importance of art and creativity, going beyond the printed page or familiar rituals. I think Rachel mentioned just sort of for somebody, the joy of like being in that rare book room in Cincinnati at Hebrew Union College. And there's just a picture of Caroline, like amazing, you know, so amazed and so moved, I think, by the beauty of this visual sort of traditions that we were in close contact with, and sort of this idea that our Jewish community should always be around and creating that kind of beauty as a way to access our tradition. She and Ellery planned a Passover time event where people preparing for finals took a moment out, went and smushed up some flowers and reflected on liberation, right? Any space, right? We can change by bringing just sort of a different kind of mode to it. I did recommend this book earlier, but I'm counting on her not have followed up on my suggestion. It's like, this is a real problem. It's like, I shouldn't make suggestions because then I'm like, oh no, what if they, right, it's on my mind. This is by Jody Eichler Levine, Painted Pomegranates and Needlepoint Rabbis, How Jews Craft Resilience and Create Community. Right on target. I want to thank again everybody here for being with us today. Family, of course, community, thank you so much, alumni. You know, we're so grateful to have you. As was suggested in this really ongoing community. We're excited to welcome these students to this ongoing community. So we'll hope to see you on Zoom and also in person, those of you who are around. I want to thank Katie Beasley-Ciro. You know that these things don't just happen, even though it sort of seems like they might. And really, this was a lot of heavy lifting today. And I want to thank you so much for your efforts today and throughout the year to make this year possible. Thank you to the first year students. We're looking forward to what comes next. And to all of you, whether you've traveled from around the country, just to your Zoom screen, or a few blocks away, we want to travel home safely. Say hello before you go. You know, I think this is just, suddenly I know you all know a lot more about the Jewish Communal Leadership Program than many of you did coming in. Stick with us. There's always a lot going on here. And thanks to all. It looks like, as Joe mentioned, Spring maybe is actually arriving or should be soon. So I would say, let's get planting. Thank you. And stick around, the food is still here and the people are still here for a bit, so enjoy.
That concludes our ceremony. Thank you so much to our graduates and everyone for putting on a wonderful event. Feel free to grab some more Zingerman's food and take some photos with our photographer, Annalicia. Thank you so much for your support of our students.